Hi and welcome to this Vizlib how-to video. My name is Michael and I will walk you through how to create a nice looking P&L like this. If you would like to create a balance sheet or a cash flow report, you can follow the exact same structure, but simply adjust the template to your needs. First step, let's take a look at the demo app and the data we use. There are two different demo apps, so first pick the one most suitable for you. They are both exactly the same apart from the number format. Second, there is some data we need to load. An Excel file that has all the metadata and some QVDs with demo data. Put the files in a folder that you can easily find. Then point the data connection to your folder. You should now be able to reload your data, so try that and make sure that it works. Your data model should look like this. As you can see, there are only a few tables and we're using a common star schema. The report setup is connected directly to the transactional table, which gives us good performance and full flexibility. While the extension would work with any data model, including complex link tables, we strongly recommend sticking to a simple model, both for performance and maintenance reasons. The transactional data can be collected from any source system using the common Qlik Sense connectors. The Excel file is then how we control the structural setup of the P&L. It works together with a template script to create the right data model. If you want to use the finance report without the template, that is perfectly possible, but of course requires more developer skills. In that case, please refer to the documentation for how to prepare the data. Now let's go through some of the settings. The first tab, Options, gives the Qlik script some basic information. The name of the transaction table and the account field are needed to create a key. It does not have to be an account. Any key field will do, but since account is the most common, we have that in the template. Extra group is an aggregated level of your P&L setup. You can have one or more as long as each is an aggregate of the row level. To add a completely different setup, add one more row to the Options tab and a corresponding new tab in the Excel sheet. The extra mapping intervals is for when you want to connect, for example, both accounts and cost centers to your rows. The P&L setup should be fairly easy to understand. Each row in the Excel represents a row in your report. The intention is that the person responsible for the report, and typically not IT, can own this spreadsheet and make any required changes. But of course, that's completely up to you. Row number should always be unique and is used as a reference for some more advanced settings. Row type is connected to how the row is handled by the script. For example, the running total will always include all the rows above. This is described in detail on the T-Style tab of the Excel sheet. Report row is the name of the row, and row group is that aggregated level we mentioned before. Accounts can be either an interval, separated by dash, or a single value. It can also be a text, but then naturally only a single value and not an interval. Prevent expand, decide whether a row should have the plus sign for expand or not. Typically, it does not make sense to have total rows expanded, so those should have a 1 in the prevent expand column. Calculation is used to allow multiple calculations in the same column. Mostly, this is used to create percentages or blank rows, but some customers have a longer list of KPIs with completely unique calculations in the same table. Just don't forget that using many calculations will have an impact on performance for larger datasets. Calculation input will help in using a minimal number of calculations. This will make the calculations easier to understand, but may have a negative impact on performance. Depending on your setup, you might want to use calculations and set expressions instead. Multiple is mostly used when you have negative rows as positive. The number formats are used to allow different formatting on different rows. Important to note is that if you're using aggregated levels in your P&L, the same format has to be used for all rows included in the aggregation. See for example here with the 2 rows for licenses. They have to be of identical number format. Number format examples are on the TNUM format tab of Excel. If you're mixing different separators for decimals and thousands, you will have to handle that in the actual expressions too. In the template, a certain row can be set to a different number format for exports. The typical use case is when you have users on different regional settings of Excel that want the export to be in local format but still want to see the report in the global number format in Qlik Sense. Row override let us control exactly what rows are included in the total. This setting overrules the row type setting in the script and connect the row to any interval of rows. To manage totals on top or totals at irregular places in the report, this is what you would use. Finally, the style num is connected to the row style in the extension settings. There are 5 default styles, but up to 99 styles can be added. Note that multiple row types can have the same style. I will not go through the script in detail, but here's a quick overview. The first tabs are simply normal general ledger data, and there is of course also a calendar in there. More interesting for the P&L are the 2 tabs for account mapping. The call tab is where you can change the data connection and the Excel file if needed, but mostly this should be fine just as it is. The entire logic for reading the Excel and connecting the report setup to your data is in the subroutine called Vizlib Finance Report. The script is rather complex, but there are comments throughout, so it should be perfectly possible for the more experienced Qlik developer to follow what we're doing. In short, we read the rows of the template and use joins and interval matches to connect everything. If you have set up multiple reports, the entire section will repeat for each report. The final piece of the puzzle is using the correct measure. The trick is to allow multiple expressions depending on the row type, but still minimize the number of different calculations. This is solved using a pick statement that checks for calculation associated with a certain row type. This way, in a standard P&L, we'd only need 2 calculations, plus a setting for blank rows. The first expression is a simple sum of all transactions connected to that row. This may actually be enough for some P&L setups. In that case, all other calculations can be removed and the pick statement discarded. The second expression is a space for blank rows. The third expression is slightly more complex, but it does the typical percentage calculation. This expression is built dynamically using the calculation input field in Excel. This will require an if statement, but allows us to use one single expression for all rows with similar calculations. The drawback is some loss of performance, and the advantage is lower expression complexity with easier maintenance. For a better understanding of how this works, compare the calculation input fields in Excel with their respective calculations. The format code is used to allow different formats on different rows. Make sure the measure number format is set to auto for this to work. Again, if you only use one expression in your P&L, this part can be discarded and the number format set in the object for better performance. To change the setup of the P&L, simply change names and add or remove rows in the Excel file. If you need totals on top rather than below each section, the intervals for each total has to be defined in the Excel. Use the row from override and row to override columns as we talked about before. If you do this, you have to adjust the intervals manually when inserting or removing rows. Now that we have the basic setup, we can spend time making it more visual. Through settings in the extension, it is possible to add indicators. Indicators can be either icons or data bars. Icons are typically colored arrows, but a few more options are available. Colors and icons can be set by intervals or using an expression. Adjust everything to your liking, and we're done. Thank you all for listening, and remember to follow us on social media for the latest updates. And of course, any questions or feedback, don't hesitate to let us know.